Half a century ago, Connecticut made a deliberate policy decision to put itself in the lead nationally in responsible, environmentally sound waste disposal. And the core to that strategy was the development of waste to energy facilities that could dispose of trash in what was the most environmentally sound way. Unfortunately, the infrastructure that was built half a century ago is now obsolete and failing. And the prime example of that is the waste to energy facility that's down in the South Meadows in Hartford, the facility that's run by what was the CRRA, now known as MIRA, Materials Innovation Resources Authority. That facility has had a number of catastrophic failures already. It's on its last legs, and it has, for a number of years, handled a significant amount of the state's waste. So as that facility goes offline, it takes some significant capacity out of the system. And we're also in a time when the economics of waste to energy don't work quite as well as they used to. So as a state, we're really in need of adopting and quickly implementing a plan to put us back in the lead in the 21st century with a waste disposal system that is both environmentally responsible and fiscally sustainable. Right now, unfortunately, we're in a situation where most towns, many towns, are going to be forced to rely on trucking or shipping by train their trash out of state to out of state landfills, which is not good for the environment. It's not good for decarbonization. It's not good for our air quality here. And it means that we have gone from being a leader to being a real laggard in waste disposal. The answer to how the waste crisis has affected municipal budgets and taxpayers varies town to town. It depends on what contracts they have in place. But the elimination of MIRA eliminates what was sort of a public option in a sense. It was a quasi-public entity that could provide waste disposal with a price that helped to set the market price. Unfortunately, as MIRA has gone away, we're going to be more and more at the mercy of the private market. And the reason I say that's unfortunate is that right now, the most cost-effective way to dispose of trash is out-of-state landfilling, which is not great from an environmental standpoint. So the market is pushing towns into an environmentally irresponsible option in order to get the most cost-effective waste disposal. What we really need to do is do what we did half a century ago. As a state, we have to recognize that if you want Connecticut towns to be able to dispose of their trash in an environmentally responsible way that is also fiscally sound, we're going to have to build public-private partnerships where there is some public skin in the game at a statewide or at minimum regional basis so that you can get these projects done. There's no place in the country that is putting modern, environmentally sound technology into use where there's not some amount of public subsidy and it's not a public-private partnership. That's really the direction we have to go in here. Without that, there's going to be a lot of volatility, a lot of unpredictability, and probably a lot of upward price pressure for towns. So EPR refers to extended producer responsibility, where the companies that are manufacturing certain types of goods have an ongoing responsibility to either assist with their recycling, their reuse, or their disposal, or to fund that process. So that's often the case with tires, with mattresses, but more and more, we're seeing a lot of our waste come from things like packaging. And it probably makes a lot of sense to adopt similar EPR approaches to other parts of our waste stream so that we can try to internalize the costs of waste creation. I think in Connecticut, most people are at this point pretty used to separating out what they traditionally think of as recyclable materials from their other trash, but there's still improvement to be done there. And we, in the city of Hartford, had to engage in a really aggressive educational campaign because there were things ending up in the recycling bins that really didn't belong there. There's also the need to make sure that what ends up in the recycling bin is not contaminated, is not dirty to such an extent that it gets rejected for recycling. So that kind of education work is ongoing. But I think more important than that, in the future is going to be education, particularly around organic separation, getting those organics out of the waste stream. We've got a great local company here in Hartford called Blue Earth Compost, which has begun to establish some relationships with some municipalities, including down in Middletown, with some pilot projects, as well as a lot of private arrangements, both with residential and with commercial customers, to compost. And of course, they're not the only player in that space. But I think that we're going to have to continue to do education on that issue in particular, especially if we move toward requiring organic separation of the waste stream, which is probably the direction we ought to go. The other thing that will obviously require a lot of education is if we move in the direction of pay as you throw. So that's a little bit more controversial. Obviously, there's going to be more resistance from some folks to paying directly for the weight that you produce in trash. But there again, there's a pretty good public policy argument for it. And the question is, how do you make sure that you implement that in a way that involves enough community education and also doesn't provide a disproportionate burden on families at the lower end of the income scale. And that's a really important part of that too. We've got to strike a balance in those public policy objectives. I think we're going to need to help change habits in the years ahead. And the legislature can help play an important role by incentivizing some of those programs, whether it's incentivizing pilot programs to get organics out, whether it's incentivizing experiments with pay as you throw, or at the end of the day, I don't think it's going to happen this session, but in future sessions, whether it's engaging in that much bigger policy conversation about how do we partner effectively with private investors to get the best technology into this state, and how do we address this market failure, which right now drives a lot of towns to the most cost-effective but least environmentally friendly option, which is out-of-state landfill. So there's both near-term work that can be done in terms of incentivizing behavior change, incentivizing experimentation and pilot programs on organics and pay-as-you-throw, and there's that critical, larger conversation that still has to happen awfully fast about how we can move Connecticut into the 21st century when it comes to waste disposal. The reason that this conversation about solid waste disposal, municipal waste disposal is so important, is that it is actually one of the most powerful things we can do to help create a greener, cleaner state and a greener, cleaner world. There is a huge amount of environmental impact from trash. And by taking waste out of the waste stream, we can have a massive positive environmental impact. By processing that waste and reusing as much as possible, we can have a massive positive environmental impact. And of course, if you do all that right, you can also add the predictability and the stability that our towns deserve as they're budgeting and trying to do the right thing for our environment and for our taxpayers.